Okay. Welcome everybody to our podcast, the Aftermarket Champions Podcast, hosted by Entitle. My name is Vivek Joshi. I'm the founder and CEO of Entitle. And with me today, I am pleased to have our next guest, Tony Black, who's the president of services for Husky in Toronto, Canada. I met Tony, actually, as it turns out, a very long time ago in business school, and then our paths crossed again recently. And the more I learned about his background, the more I thought it was quite interesting for us to learn to understand how he came to not just his current role, but the roles he had in services before this. And so I asked Tony to come on as a guest, and he's graciously accepted my invitation. So without further ado, I want to introduce Tony Black. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vivek. It's nice to be here today, and good to be talking and just sharing experiences. Looking forward to talking and just giving everybody an update on what's going on here and a little bit about my background.
Great. So with that, Tony, can you tell us a little bit of background? I know I mentioned that you're the president of Husky Services today, but you've had a very interesting career to date before you joined Husky. So maybe a little bit of a background, and also a little bit about what Husky does. So it'll give people a framework of reference, if you may.
Yeah, sure. Let's start with Husky. First of all, Husky it's a great company, really a industry leader, also kind of a technology innovator, and really I would say started with the industry in really how to industrialize injection molding technologies. And so Husky started here in Canada as an entrepreneur, started the company, and the company has really developed into an industry leader in injection molding technologies. Everything from solutions for packaging for food, water, medical, and any other type of injection molding applications and technologies. The company, the brand is in this space. The brand is really the leader. It's which really is exciting. The people that work here have worked here a long time, so there's a lot of experience here. So it's really, we like to say, our company is powered by people, but also innovation. We're a super global company. We operate in almost every country around the world, have a really strong footprint of our manufacturing, have a big manufacturing here in Canada, but also in Luxembourg, in Shanghai, in India, in Vermont, and then we have a really strong footprint for our service organization around the world. So very global company as well.
Awesome.
And we can get more into Husky as we get into the discussion. But I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So of course we met at Darden at the business school, and but my initial education is engineering. I have a degree in ocean or marine engineering. Never really worked in marine engineering. Actually went into aerospace after school, and then decided after that to go back and get the business degree. From there, I spent the next roughly 30 years working for United Technologies Corporation, and but most of that time was in the OTIS elevator company. And I would say, so about 25 years at the OTIS Elevator Company, another great company, real service. That is a service company,
Yeah.
For sure. About half of my time, so about 12 years, I spent in either Japan or China. I ran the OTIS Japan company, also was the leader or president of the OTIS brand in China. And then after that, I came back to a global role in OTIS and led pretty significant service transformation there, which included a big digital component to that transformation. And then before that, in UTC and OTIS did, I'm not going to go through all the different jobs, but a lot of different things. But then actually in 2020 came over to work at Husky to really take a really good service business more of a traditional service business and transform it into a more proactive and predictive service business. And that's what I've been doing since 2020 here at Husky.
So if I remember, you joined right before COVID started. So there was an interesting transition for you in terms of your physical transformation, in terms of being, relocating, as well as all the work you need to do in the service business. So, what's interesting about your background, and obviously I knew a little bit about it before we started this meeting, is that the people I've interviewed either came from traditional engineering roles or operations roles and then moved into service. You were a general manager, you were a country president in Japan and China, and then you kind of came back and led the service transformation, which is a very different path. And then for the last, I'd say, decade or so, you've been really immersed in service, which is an interesting background. So when you think about where you are today as the president of services, how did that early experience as a GM president, how did that kind of impact your choices or impact how you run the service business today?
Vivek, I think actually I have to go back even further in my career. When I started with OTIS, I started in a small branch office in Miami, Florida. And as I said, OTIS is a service company. It's really deep in the culture. 1852, Elijah Otis, invented the hardware, but 1862, Charles Otis, his son, invented the service contract. So from the very beginning, that company is all about service. And so when I started there in that branch, I actually started working as a service mechanic and repair and maintenance and installation. Then I worked in service sales, and then I worked in service and installation field operations. And really, it kind of got into my DNA from the beginning. And I kind of knew right from the start that that's what I wanted to do. That's what I like to do. That's what actually drives business growth.
Yeah.
You have good service, customers buy your products, you service those products, they buy more products, and it's that nice business cycle. So that's how I really, I would say, got to the point where I said, "Hey, I want my career to be service." Now, even when you're running big P&Ls, at Otis, it is a lot about service, and so it's just a big part of the main part of your job is to just make sure that you are delivering on your customers' commitments, delivering on the commitments that you've made to your customers, and delivering on the promise. And it's all about that. And service is all about that, right? Is delivering on those commitments. So I really enjoy that. I see the value of that. I see the value of getting your employees to really understand that. And that's how I got really kind of hooked, if you will, in service.
It's interesting what you said. There's two or three things you said. One is 1862. I cannot believe it's been that long, 160 years since somebody developed a service contract, right? So that's point number one. Point number two, I do recall, by the way, when you and I were in business school, we did a case on Otis, if you remember, the original remote monitoring case. I think it was in operations, if I remember correctly. But the other thing that you mentioned, which is you're probably the third person who said to me, and I'm surprised we don't hear this more often, is that service gives you a continuing relationship and an ability and an opportunity to deliver an experience a customer remembers all the time. And therefore, she will come back to you when she's ready to do something different and new. And people seem to forget that, right? I mean, people seem to forget that this continuing relationship that service has is an incredibly powerful experience, marketing, sales, whatever you want to call it, opportunity. Yet, I hate to say this, but the bulk of the leadership in American manufacturing companies literally seems to overlook this most obvious of secrets, if you may, right?
It is amazing. There's a lot of product companies that don't understand the value of that, and they have big install bases, big customer network, and really don't get that. And that the value proposition of that is enormous. and that's what we're doing at Husky. We have a great product. We have a great footprint, great service organization, because you always need to have, in a global company, you need to be close to your customer. You can't do it all from Toronto, Canada. You need to be close to your customer. So we have that.
Yeah.
And now we couple that with the ability to be more proactive. We were already very responsive. Now we add that proactive piece to it,
Yeah.
and we're finding that. And by the way, today it's even more critical to have that ability with the demographics changing and the skilled talent shortage that there is for service technicians. It's just, it's a tremendous value proposition that is great for your customers and great for the business growth as well.
If you think about the last part you said, and I want to come back to that in a second, but I want to go back to this customer experience and the hidden. I had done some analysis many years ago when I first started in Title about one of our customers' data sets, right? This is a company that sold instrumentation, lab instrumentation. And what's interesting, Tony, is to the point you mentioned earlier, for every transaction where they sold an equipment or a machine, there were 30, 40, 50 transactions over the next decade or 15 years where the service or consumables or parts were touching that machine, something was happening. And that frequency of touches can be leveraged in many ways. You're using it to deliver proactive service, but you can drive the customer experience value from there as well. I would think that it's almost like instead of calling you the president of service, it's almost like you're the chief customer officer to some degree, right? If you think about that.
Right. We call our service organization, it is a customer-centric organization. On my business card, my title says President of Service and Quality Experience, because that's again what we want to make sure the quality experience or the experience over the life of the product is there. And what we talk about here at Husky is we call it commitment made, delivered, and maintained, and that's across the entire experience. So when we deliver the Husky machine or the Husky mold, we want to deliver it with the right quality. We want to deliver it on time, and when the customer starts it, it needs to meet those nameplate performance requirements. But it's not done there, right?
Right.
We don't say goodbye.
Right.
We want to maintain the commitment all the way through the life of the equipment.
Right.
That nameplate performance all the way through, 10, 15, 20 years until it's time for the customer to buy a new machine. And over those 20 years, though, to do that, again, it's a partnership where we're making sure the customer, gets the performance that they need. But to do that takes, a maintenance contract, a connected solution, takes the spare parts that are required, takes the technical support that's required, takes the modernization or the technology updates and upgrades and improvements that are required across, those 20 years. And when the 20 years are done, the customer, it's really easy for the customer to say, wow, I've had such a great experience with Husky, I'm going to buy a new Husky.
Yeah, absolutely. And but all in this 20 years, there's two things going on. You've been fortunate so far. Actually, all of us have been fortunate so far that for the most part, we've had long tenured employees in these manufacturing businesses who've been there for a long time. Joe in the shop who's been there for 40 or 50 years, or Al who's a service guy for 60 years. Believe it or not, when I was with one of the big industrial conglomerates 25 years ago, we literally had people in their 70s who were still working for us because we refused to let them go. And they had so much knowledge that we literally refused to let them go. But now when you start thinking about what's going on with, I call it the silver tsunami, people have called it that, the great shift changes, somebody I talked to call it that. To me, the things that you're doing, the things that you were doing at OTIS and now you're doing at Husky, which is the remote monitoring and diagnostics or the connected service enterprise experience, is a way to automate and institutionalize this knowledge that was residing in people's brains, but you're now trying to automate that. Is that an explicit strategy that you guys are thinking about, or is that something that is going to be beneficial because now these retirements won't hamper your business anymore?
For sure, it's part of our strategy. We have developed a capability and a solution. We call it Advantage Plus Elite. It's a connected solution. We actually developed the analytics and the dashboards in-house, and I think that's a competitive advantage because we have our best system knowledge people here who understand what really matters,
Yeah.
what variables to monitor, what insights are important. So we developed those, and we were able to do it pretty quickly. We stayed focused and developed that. Of course, we don't develop an edge device or the cloud. We use the leaders for that, but the actual analytics we developed in house, and we launched this product 2 years ago, and the growth of it and the uptake is phenomenal. Again, compounded because of the silver tsunami effect that's happening. We thought, we're moving into a lot of new markets where we have customers who are new to the technology, brand new to it. And we thought this solution would be more applicable for those newer customers. But the reality is, our most experienced customers are facing the same challenges of, trying to keep that talent and that knowledge. So they find a lot of value in this as well. This has been a very important part of our strategy, and it's really been successful so far and growing significantly. Every system that we sell today is embedded with 2 years of this capability. It's a 2-year, kind of a subscription for 2 years.
Yep.
Again, the customer, the renewability of this has been actually over 100%. Because customers, they try it on their new system and they see the value of it and they say, wow, I have 10 other machines in my install base. Can you add this to that? And we can, for the most part. And then, so actually, we like to say our renewal rate, everybody kind of targets 100%.
Yeah.
We're getting over 100%, because of the install base that we're attaching to.
That's amazing. So when you think of what you're doing today at Husky and your previous experience at OTIS, because OTIS was, in my mind, one of the leaders or pioneers in the whole remote monitoring and diagnostic for services capabilities. Clearly, OTIS had 100 years to do it. You guys have been doing it for 2 years or 2.5 years since you got there. What were the learnings from OTIS in that connected elevator, connected lift to Husky that you're going to bring forward? Because there's a bunch of learnings you guys went through that can be brought over. What are your thoughts?
I think there's one really. I think okay, maybe it's too basic, but I'll say it anyways because I think it's important. The importance of the service technician is don't ever think the connected solution is going to replace the service technician. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so we always need to have good service technicians, and we need to have them close to our customers.
Yeah.
That's a learning, and that we've kept that that learning. Now the capability of the service technicians does change actually, because you have those super techs that you used to try to have everywhere.
Right.
You don't have to do the super tech everywhere. You can have the super techs in your monitoring centers.
Yeah.
And you can have more general techs out in the field supporting you. So that's a very important thing. That we also so there is a people factor that goes with the technology. In our solution here, we have a program manager who talks to the customer every week.
Mm-hmm.
And goes through what happened in the prior week and opportunities, and also, so it's a partnership. Again, one thing that we found very important is it's, the idea of if you think it's just about sending out a kind of an automated
Alert.
message alert
Yeah.
that just says, hey, there's a high vibration or there's a high temperature, that doesn't, customers really are not, it's not going to help them very much.
Right.
But when you add the people factor, and then you add also it's called We Call You, the message, it goes out and it explains the probable root cause. It gives the probable solutions, some troubleshooting guidance, and it's really, so there's a ton of value in those communications.
Yeah.
And if it's urgent, it's followed with it's actually led with a call,
Mm-hmm.
a call to that customer, and we have a classification. So there is, I guess, one big important thing here is there's a really important people factor that you have to marry with the digital technology.
Yeah. And I think what you said is actually interesting. So years ago, when I was at this big conglomerate, big industrial conglomerate, we were focused on remote monitoring and diagnostics. And for us, we were trying to get to the same kind of productivity leverage, if you may, that you just described, where you don't need to plan super techs or hire super techs in every single location, but they can be more centralized either monitoring centers or have access to this monitor. And then you can get by with less experience, less technically astute techs in the field to get things done. So that's one productivity aspect. The other thing that I thought we did well back in those days, and I think you mentioned this to me when you and I spoke a few weeks ago, is when you ship the machine with a 2-year subscription to your connected service, you also make that, I think you said, maybe I misheard you, part of your service contract as well, right? So it kind of helps you make that service contract more effective. Is that correct, Tony?
Yes, it is in effect. It's in effect coming with a 2-year service contract.
Okay.
Yes. No, that's, and that again is, I think customers really appreciate getting, that right from the start. Like, don't wait until, a year and then come back and try to do that. Customers want to and need actually the support right from the start.
Yep.
So as we start them. We actually, when we sell a new machine, it comes with an actual startup by our technician, and then it goes right into the connected solution. So from the very beginning, we're together with the customer, and that commitment maintained is really serious. Like, it's not just a bunch of words. We take it really serious. We measure it. So in addition to, we're meeting with every customer every week, I have an operational meeting with my team every week, and I look at, anybody who is below a certain performance level, they get spiked out on a dashboard, and I'm asking the question, why is that customer below the performance level? What are we doing to get them back on nameplate performance? So not only are we monitoring, we're actually internally in our operational team looking at it by customer every week, and really keeping our customers on target.
So I'm going to pick on the thread some more for a couple of reasons. One is you talked about the fact that you're not just monitoring it and making sure there's a prescription or action that needs to happen. You're monitoring the performance level of your customers. So your customers' health is what you're watching. The second thing you said is you've basically attached what we in the software world call a customer success manager to your customer operations manager's hip to make sure that he or she has that support they need. And the third thing is you're basically tying it to your view of how the business is running today. Now, what's interesting is this whole notion of customer success that you're marrying with this connected service is an important way to make sure adoption and success happens in your customer base as well. We see that in our business also, by the way. We also attach a customer success manager to our customers for much the same reason. Do you think that this model of person plus technology is what's going to be required for the next few years till this becomes more of a widespread adoption, Tony? Because, I've always watched this notion of IoT or remote monitoring and diagnostics and have said, but obvious, right? It should happen. but the adoption rate has been extraordinarily slow, I think, in industry. And I wonder if the model you have is what's required for most companies to jumpstart that adoption.
Yeah, I really, for me, it's been a pretty eye-opening to see the importance of that. Of course, you need to be able to scale it. The first question is, how do you scale something like that? We're developing the tools and the capabilities to allow us to scale it. So we're not concerned about the scalability. We have that on our radar, and it's part of the the modules that we continue. We've released over 11 specific 11 modules for Advantage Plus Elite, and those modules are adding. Some of them are more focused on new capabilities and for the customer, and some are to improve the ability to scale. Scale what we're talking about here, which is having these program managers assigned to each customer.
Right.
But to answer your question is yes. I think it's very important. We measure. They're measured on customer success also. So their annual objectives are measured on that, and actually mine are as well. So it's not just about business growth. It's about making sure our customers succeed.
Yeah. So. When you think about the transition you've been through in terms of OTIS, which is heavily IoT oriented, Husky, where you're introducing this stuff. Look, again, like you, I was introduced to IoT, remote monitoring diagnostic 25, 30 years ago. I've just been surprised that it hasn't taken off as much as it should have. This is 2023, because I always tell people, look, the world's fleets are still 95% not connected. Right. Again, at Husky, as much as you're shipping every new machine with the connected Vantage Elite service, I'd say, I don't know what the number is, but a substantial percentage of install base is still unconnected or will get connected. How long do you think, pragmatically, before you and I see a more ubiquitous IoT kind of mindset everywhere?
That's a. I mean, so for us, everything we sell now is connected,
sure.
And we're actually extending that even beyond, even to our tooling. So everything is connected. So going forward, it's 100%.
Right.
And just the way we're selling a product and a service, period, and it comes together. It's not a product. It's part of the product.
Yeah.
So going forward, it's 100%. Now, getting back into the install base, in our install base, not everything can be connected with the technology we have. So some of it, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And you just have to wait till that asset is renewed and then or upgraded, because we do. Every control upgrade that we sell today, we that is packaged with Advantage Plus Elite. And because we can do that. So the question is how long? I don't know. I'd be guessing, but I think it's real. Not fast enough.
Not fast enough.
Not fast enough. Again, I think part of the problem is there's an effort to try to do too much with it. And then you don't really there's no focus and you don't really get anything done. And, it's not impactful for the customer. So the customer doesn't really want it. I guess back to your lessons learned, you got to be really focused. It takes just one or two good insights to provide a ton of value. You don't need to have, 100 different insights.
Right.
You can find just some and that's why the system knowledge capability in building the analytics is so important, because those system engineers who have all that experience, they can hone in really on what is really going to matter. And you start with that. Just start small and provide a lot of value with those. And then once you start with those, that small, couple insights, you start learning a lot actually about other things, and then it just grows from there. So I think, there's so many different companies today offering connected solutions, and they just sending alerts. But that's not that's not going to get the kind of the install base connected. It's really has to be about high impact, very focused insights that are going to really help our customers. And we don't just provide insights on the hardware. We go right up the we call it the pyramid, where kind of go right up to the master process and the product, and we provide insights on that as well.
Yeah.
Everybody's providing insights on the hardware, but to go up into the subsystem and all the way up until, for us, the master process of how to actually make the part, providing insights on that it provides a lot of value for our customers.
Yeah. It's actually interesting what you said, the three things you said, which I think have been part of the problem all these years. And I like the fact that you articulated them. One is be extremely clear about the business value your customer is going to get right off the bat, not your value. Yes, you should care about your value, but business value to the customer matters. B, you're marrying this with a very clear but bounded things to do, right? I mean, I remember this example many years ago in the jet engine business. People said, "Oh, we monitored 2,000 different parameters," and when you ask the questions, yeah, but there's like 5 that matter, right?
Right.
And so focusing this, I know you've done Six Sigma as well, the critical few or whatever you used to call them, right? It's really focused on the critical few. The third thing you said, which is I think important, and I've seen it only with one other company that also is a customer of ours, that they assign customer success managers. You call them program managers, but it's really attaching the customer success manager to the customer, to the end user, which really makes a difference in adoption and benefits and all these other things. That's important. So that's actually a really good way to kind of set this thing up. And like you said, unfortunately, this stuff is not moving fast enough. Tony, I want to switch this, just in the last few minutes of this discussion, I want to switch to a couple of questions that were on my mind, right?
Sure.
So you went from being a corporate person, if you may, for almost 25, 30 years, to, yes, being a corporate guy again, but in a very different framework, a sponsor-owned, a private equity-owned company. I have to believe, and we had a call with a prospect the other day who told us that we were just bought by a private equity fund and the urgency just ratcheted up, right? Did you see that difference between your previous job and your Husky job? Is there material difference in urgency and intensity?
No. I think where I came from, there was an urgency culture there. There was a customer-centric culture, but a very performance centric, kind of culture and urgency. So that I didn't see a big difference. I've heard the same thing. I didn't see it. There's clearly a sense of urgency here as well. It is different. It's when I was at OTIS, it was 33,000 service technicians, and here it's about 600 service technicians. It's interesting. The company that I'm at here, Husky, is as global though, much smaller, but as global. But I have learned a lot of things from my other experience, OTIS experience, about global, being really global
means, yeah.
And I'll just, I think it's important to just tell you about that, because to be global, right, you need to, as we said earlier, you need to be there physically. And to be there means a lot of things, right? It means having your service technicians who are there close to your customers. It means having technical support who's there in the time zone, in the local language. It means having your spare parts center or spare part capability there. So the lead times, spare part lead times have to be next day anywhere.
Yeah.
It means, so that I learned that from OTIS, and that's, at Husky, we're very global, and we're really pushing that to really make sure we're doing that, to be really global, so that we can really be present for any opportunity or any problem that comes up.
Yeah, that's actually I just read that the other day somewhere. I was reading some article about some global leader, and he said exactly the same thing, which is global doesn't mean you can centralize stuff. Global means being there
It
on the
does.
ground where your customers and where your people are. So that's great.
It's
You
kind
know,
of it's kind of like I guess you could call it a company an exporter to a real global company. An
yeah,
exporter tries to just kind of do everything from a centralized
yeah,
place, but if you really want to be global, you really, really need to physically be there.
yeah. One last question on this notion of sponsor owned or private equity owned thing. Uh, when you were brought into Husky, was it because your private equity owners had a specific deal thesis around service, or was that just a continuation of where they were before? Because I've seen when sponsor-owned companies start kind of really get going, they really focus heavily on service and aftermarket, like you're doing. Was that a specific point that Platinum made in this regard?
Yeah, I think though it wasn't just platinum. It was the CEO here also. They together saw that they saw the opportunity out there, but the experience wasn't here.
Yeah,
And so again, it was really to get to it was visible, but how do what's the playbook to get there? And
yeah,
so that's why
yeah.
they asked me to come over. For me, it is a big change. I worked my whole career at UTC and OTIS, and when I was first approached about it, I really kind of I was like, I was actually at the time living in Florida, and Florida, Canada, big, this giant service company, small.
Uh,
But then I came and they were like, come on, just come talk to us. And I came and met the people here really. And again, like the nice things about Husky is similar to where I came from, right? It's a industry leader, market leader, super strong brand, strong people. So with all that, and then I met, the people here, met the CEO, really said, wow, I think I can take what I've learned in the last 25 years and try it here and add a lot of value. And so I decided to do it, and I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been a good run, and still a lot to do, but great.
Great. Excellent. Well, I'm going to wrap it up with a more broad question, career question. So, when I think of the business school you and I went to, it is very type A, very intense school. UTC, Otis was not that different from where I did my early part of the career at GE. Very intense, very, very type A people. But there was no culture in the past for people like you and me to wind up in services or wind up in the aftermarket. Do you think that's going to change with what's it going to take to have people like you and me in services? Because candidly, there just weren't that many people like you and me in services.
Right. No, that's interesting. I still think, yeah, there's not enough of us out there today. It's true. And wow, I don't know what it's going to take. I do, like, when I do meet a lot of, I try to meet, as many new employees and interns, and I think it's just it's awareness, because
Yeah.
when when you get that exposure to what it really is and what the opportunities are and the potential is, there's a lot of interest. It's I think it starts with just more awareness about what service is, and what the potential is, um, and yeah, and giving that awareness. There is, um, it it's harder to find a company also that is really has a service culture, but also provides the end to end
Experience.
experience from design through selling and manufacturing and installing and servicing, and so that also, I think, when I talk to people coming into their careers, that's one thing I tell them is, if you can find an opportunity in a company like that, and work in service, it's great because you're working really from the customer.
Absolutely.
You're starting at the right place, and you're really learning from the customer, which is what I did when I talked about. I started in that branch, and my very first experience is with customers, and then you work up, and you get into the P&L roles and the other roles. But to me, it's the best way to actually start a career is in service.
Yeah, Tony, I'll make one last observation as we wind up this call. But what you just said is actually interesting. So you and I, again, when we go back to business school, or when I used to go back to Darden to kind of talk to students, I used to say, look, there are two things that I wish I had paid attention to, and I wish they're taught when we were, Darden. One is what we used to call the arts and crafts class, writing. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad people write and communicate, right? So that is an undersold, underappreciated thing in business school. The second thing that never taught you and me was selling, the art of selling, right? I mean, think about it. There's no sales 101 class in business school, at least not that I know of. The third thing, I think you and I don't want to volunteer you and I to do this, but I almost think there needs to be a service 101 class. Yes, we had that, but there's nothing along the lines what you just talked about. And it's everything from the mechanics of no pun intended, but mechanics of service, to the customer experience piece of it, to the technology piece of it, to the full aspect of what it means to deliver value to a customer. It's almost like they need to create that class for not just business school students, but just kids coming out of school now. I mean, I think it's just unbelievable out there.
No, I think I agree. I think that's a great idea. I think the other, to add to that customer experience, that kind of a gap that, I think is, I see is the customer centricity, and the buzzword of customer empathy. But I was talking to a couple people. Actually, I was just at a customer a few days ago, and I was there because the customer wasn't happy, and I was trying to explain empathy, and it really is like just force yourself to put yourself in that customer's shoes and think about what they're experiencing, and just force yourself to do. If you can do that, you will succeed with the customer. And that's what we did at this customer. I really just, I understood where he was coming from, and he was right, because from his perspective, he had a problem, and he needed help. And so you just you do that, and you listen, and you give solutions, and your customer is with you. So I think the 101, what is service, but also 101, like customer empathy, what does it really mean, and how to actually get that mindset.
Maybe this is what you and I can do after we retire. So anyway. Good. Well, Tony, this has been absolutely fabulous. I think the range of topics we touched was great in terms of your early career, the remote monitoring and IoT kind of service, customer empathy, customer experience, and then bringing it all together was really, really powerful in my mind. So I appreciate the time you spent with me today. I'm looking forward to getting this thing out in the podcast world. And again, Tony, thank you so much. I know you have a busy schedule, so I appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks, Vivek. Good catching up. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.